In recent years, the film industry has been flooded with sequels, prequels, reboots, and remakes, leaving audiences feeling disillusioned and studios scrambling to figure out what will actually draw people to theaters. After a string of box office flops, it can be disheartening for everyone involved. When all else fails, studios often decide to gamble and revive a project that once garnered decent reviews and achieved a cult following. The 2024 reboot of The Crow seems to have followed this pattern but didn't fare so well at the box office. Directed by Rupert Sanders, yes, that Rupert Sanders, and starring Bill Skarsgård, FKA Twigs, Laura Byrne, and Danny Huston, the film had high expectations. In this episode, we'll dive into a comparison of the original The Crow with its reboot, examining what each did well and exploring ways both could have improved their narratives. But before we get to the review, if you enjoy this type of content, hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Also, hitting the notification bell will alert you when we drop new content. Now, let's get critical. The first aspect worth discussing in these films is their stylistic approach. Each version presents a distinct visual style, offering viewers a clear sense of the film's tone and direction. The 1994 version, for example, embraces its Gothic aesthetic unapologetically. From the makeup to the set design and cinematography, the film exudes a dark, cynical view of society, fixated on death and despair while struggling to find any light. Imagine something along the lines of Wednesday Addams or Lydia Deetz. Fans of the gothcore will know the vibes.
Think of it this way. A goth believes that deep down the world is totally f***ed up. But an emo thinks that deep down they are totally f***ed up.
That's not much of a difference.
That's a huge f***ing difference! Okay, look.
Lead cinematographer Darius Wolski uses high contrast black and white shots with harsh lighting, creating deep shadows that amplify the grim world of Eric Draven as the original Crow. There's no ambiguity here, either visually or thematically. Everything is steeped in a binary world of good versus evil. In contrast, The Crow 2024 adopts a more vibrant and subdued visual storytelling style. The softer shadows, muted tones, and occasional scenes of natural light create a relaxed atmosphere that distances itself from the harshness of the original. These visual choices mirror Bill Skarsgård's Eric's internal turmoil. When the tones are softer and more natural, it reflects a character who is broken, unsure, and aimless. The director's hesitancy to fully commit to the darkness of the Crow's world is apparent, particularly when moments of decisiveness in the film's tone emerge, only to be short-lived. Whereas Brandon Lee's Crow fits seamlessly into the oppressive environment of the original, Skarsgård's version feels almost out of place. A particular scene where Eric walks down a brightly lit European street, unnoticed by anyone around him, feels jarringly inappropriate for the somber character. This reboot's aesthetic is overly sleek and polished, aligning more with films like 2019's Pet Sematary or the 2024 remake of Salem's Lot, where sleek cinematography and set designs are juxtaposed with darker themes. While the basic narrative structure of both films remains similar, they diverge significantly in their execution and endgame. The 1994 film revolves around Eric's relentless pursuit of justice, driven by his pain and determination to set things right after his lover's brutal death. Brandon Lee's portrayal shows a resolute and steadfast Crow, focused not only on avenging Shelley but also aiding those who were close to him in life. However, the original film does falter in its one-dimensional portrayal of villains, which is a shortcoming shared by the reboot. Despite these flaws, the original focuses less on explaining the lore behind the Crow's abilities and more on Eric's personal pain and quest for redemption. Once Eric's mission for vengeance is complete, his soul can rest. The reboot, however, offers a softer, more detached narrative. The characters seem nonchalant, living in a bubble of privilege and indulgence that doesn't align with the presence of a crime lord supposedly hunting them. Their behavior suggests an affluent, carefree existence where nothing truly threatens their comfort. The result is a group of characters that feel pouty and disaffected at best, and when tragedy strikes, it's difficult for the audience to empathize because the characters themselves seem indifferent. This differs from the original, where Eric and Shelley were portrayed as innocent people trying to make the best of their situation, only to become victims of senseless violence. In the reboot, the characters' lack of depth and relatability makes their demise feel less tragic. The lack of depth becomes even more apparent with the revival of Shelley at the end. This conclusion can confuse the audience, leaving them unsure of what was real. Was the entire movie a metaphor, or did the events actually happen with Eric having the power to reset time? It's all very confusing. Another key difference between the two films lies in how Eric's powers are explained. In the 1994 version, Eric's abilities and immortality stem from the Crow that guides him. This contrasts with the reboot, where his powers are tied to his love for FKA Twigs' Shelley Webster.
Why did I stop healing?
I said your love needed to remain pure. The enemy of love is not hate, it's doubt.
I never doubted her.
Didn't you?
The shift poses a challenge for the audience, as the strength of the character now hinges on a romance that feels more like a fleeting connection than a deep, soul-binding love. Much of the reboot's first half is spent trying to convince viewers of the depth of this relationship, whereas the original quickly establishes the pain and darkness without dwelling on romantic backstory. The villains in each film further illustrate these tonal differences. Michael Wincott's top dollar in the 1994 film is a crime lord who thrives in a grimy, crime-infested world. His character, while somewhat one-dimensional, fits perfectly within the film's bleak, chaotic environment. When confronted by something beyond his control, Eric's supernatural abilities, Top Dollar's sense of power is truly challenged, elevating the tension. On the other hand, Danny Houston's Vincent Rogue in the reboot is portrayed as an immortal figure whose indifference toward the Crow stems from his own otherworldly power. His goal of trading his immortality for Eric's feels like a weak subplot, undermining the sense of danger and conflict that should drive the story. Despite this, the reboot attempts to expand the lore, and that effort is appreciated, even if it falls short. When it comes to the performances of the lead actors, both Skarsgård and Lee deliver in their own ways. Lee's performance is more focused and intense, contributing to a film that feels like an independent passion project despite its big studio backing. Skarsgård, however, often appears confused in his portrayal of Eric, with his attempts at conveying pain instead coming across as boredom. If the reboot had leaned into the darker aesthetic of the original, some of these issues might have been forgiven. But as it stands, the weak story and inconsistent direction undermine the film. When I think of Gothic films, titles like Sleepy Hollow, The Pale Blue Eye, Interview with the Vampire, and even the Underworld series come to mind. These films are defined by a distinct visual style that extends into every aspect of their production, from the acting and story to the directing and cinematography. These elements are crucial in creating the immersive atmosphere where we connect with the characters. When these components don't align, it disrupts the experience, leaving the audience feeling disconnected. Now, I'm not claiming that 1994's The Crow is a masterpiece or that the 2024 version is complete garbage. What I'm saying is that the original understood the assignment. Whether it's day or night, indoors or outdoors, films that effectively use the Gothic aesthetic as a narrative tool successfully immerse both the characters and audience in the experience, which is pretty on brand for Goth. The depression, despair, darkness, and death are ever present, blending seamlessly with the environment. To highlight the contrasting outcomes of these two films, the 1994 version earned an impressive $93 million at the box office on a $23 million budget. In stark contrast, the 2024 reboot received negative reviews from critics and became a box office flop, grossing only $23 million worldwide against a $50 million project budget. For this reason, and all the others I've discussed in this comparison, the original The Crow stands out as the superior film.